Story 1. This happened some years ago in my first year at college. I was just returning to college after a winter break and was traveling from the airport at night to my campus on the other side of the city. So I needed to change a couple of subway lines and buses. What I had with me were a big suitcase, my backpack, and a notebook carrying case. I got off the subway and started looking for the elevator so I didn't have to use the escalators with all my stuff and cause any problems. I found the elevator, and it had just closed its doors, and a couple of people were already in line waiting. I got in line to wait, and a Karen arrived and started pushing people aside and tried to cut to the front. As Karen, who didn't look nearly older than 40, was trying to get past me, I turned to her and said, "Ma'am, where do you think you're going? You need to get in line to use the elevator, as all these people have been waiting to use it just like you." She opened her eyes wide, made a disgusted face at me, and said, "Don't you people read?" pointing to a sign that read, "Please give priority to the elderly and disabled," or something very close to that. I'm normally a very nice and polite guy, but I was exhausted and could not deal with her. So I said, "Oh, sorry, which are you? The elderly or disabled?" Karen was triggered. She started shaking with rage and shouted, "You are just a rude, ignorant brat. I'm older than you. You will treat me with respect." I smiled and said, "You are older than me, but you are not elderly. Plus, you talk about respect, but you pushed aside a mother with a stroller and a man in a wheelchair. She did. Where is your respect for all these people you cut in front of?" She held out her arms in her fur coat and tried hitting me with a bag of hers. I stepped out of her way, and she actually hit another lady. At that point, other people started vocally supporting me, and apparently someone called the security guard. So the guard came out of nowhere, and people started pointing at Karen. He asked Karen to follow him. Karen turned the craziness to 11 and started cursing everybody, starting with the guard and me. The guard did not lose any time and called for backup as he tried to hold her because she tried to run away in heels. It was actually hilarious. More guards arrived and dragged her since the other lady had her lips split open and wanted to press charges. I was asked to follow them as well. We took another elevator up. The police were called. They talked with everyone, and I told them what happened. The other lady told them what happened as well. In the end, Karen was taken to the police station with the other lady to press charges. Just why are you making it hard on us and for yourself? Story 2. 2 years ago, I worked at my local mall Poundland, basically the British version of the dollar store. It was 3 days before Christmas, and if you've ever worked retail, you know what a nightmare that is. In the mall, there is this cute little cafe where I sometimes like to get my lunch. It's a bit on the pricey side, so it's a rare treat for myself. I was dressed in my shop's uniform, which was black dress trousers, a black polo, black leather dress shoes, and a name tag with my hair tied up if long. It closely resembles the cafe's uniform, except for the fact my name tag clearly says Poundland on it, and they wear shirts, not polos. The times I've been there for lunch before, I have sometimes been mistaken for staff, but people are generally very good about it when I explain. But this day, that was not the case. On this day, the cafe was, of course, quite busy. The Christmas rush is as eager to eat as I am. I got a table and sat down, waiting for my order, when I felt a woman tapping my shoulder quite roughly. I actually ended up with a bruise from this, as I bruise easily. "Do you really think you should be taking up a table when people are waiting to be served?" she asked. I explained to her that I'm on my lunch break and don't actually work here, but in the shop across the mall. Of course, she didn't believe me and insisted I was lying. I pointed to my name tag and then asked that she leave me alone. This seemed to be the wrong thing to do, as she then dragged me out of my seat by my arm. Now, I'm a tiny girl, 5 foot 2 inches if I'm lucky, so moving me was easy for her. She began to scream for a manager while dragging me from my seat. By now, everyone was staring at us, and I told her, "I don't work here. I'm here for my lunch. Let go of me, or I'm calling the police." At this time, the manager ran over and shouted at her to let go of me. She began to scream about how the servers here are lazy and how I was taking up a table that should go to a customer. He just looked at me, then at her, and told her I am a customer and do not work for his cafe. In the end, mall security threw her out, and I was asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. I got a free lunch that day from the cafe. So, thanks for the free lunch, crazy woman who can't read a name tag. Story 3. Things you need to know. This happened around 20 years ago. The internet was a new and wondrous thing and only had by very rich people and companies. Parking on private land was essentially unregulated, and cowboy companies were clamping and/or fining people for parking with absolutely no saving throw for any violation. Parking companies were universally loathed. Because the parking companies are loathed, they have learned not to give out their address. They all hide behind company numbers and post office boxes. They don't give out their phone number. They really do not want angry people walking in to see the manager. All correspondence is to a PO box number. The only way to contact them is by the PO box number. Whether it's to send them a check for a penalty or to complain about the penalty, it all has to go via the PO box number. *** Post Office Regional Manager. Posty ***. What happened? Mom went to the cinema and parked, as she is entitled to, in a disabled space. When she got out, she had a ticket for parking in a disabled bay. Mom maintains the badge was on display. It basically lived on her dashboard. But there was no photo evidence taken back. Then it was simply Mom's word against the parking companies. Mom wrote to the parking company, Jerks from now on, and explained that she had a disabled permit and was allowed to park where she did. The parking company wrote back and said the fine was now doubled, and unless she paid in 7 days, she would be taken to court. Mom, now distraught, called me in tears. This was the first I knew of her predicament. I shot around to comfort her and collected the papers. She had the original fine ticket, their reply to Mom's letter, and her blue badge, the disabled parking permit. I also got to sign a letter of authority so I could act on her behalf. I told Mom not to worry about it and that I'd deal with it. I work for a large insurance company and can use the internet terminal in the library we are, as I said above, at that stage of the internet where it is a rare thing, and finding out the information I did would have taken several weeks, if not months. There are not many sites to surf at this time, but one that is Companies House, where you can get the information that companies must disclose to be lawful. 10 minutes later, I had the names and addresses of the 2 company directors and the registered address of Jerks Limited. Their premises, which could have been anywhere in the UK, never mind anywhere in my city Leeds, happened to be between where I worked and where I lived, and I passed it twice a day. I couldn't remember where that address was, but I would look out for it on my way home. And on my way home, I realized that address was, in fact, a building site. At a guess, everything from 190 to 230 had been removed to build blocks of student housing. Temporarily stumped, I went home to ponder what to do next. My wife said, "Well, how do they get their post if they're not there?" And I realized that they must have told the post office they have moved and have not needed to change the PO box number they are using. The next day, I am back at the internet machine in the library where I am doing a spot of research on the post office and PO box numbers. I called the post office and asked to speak to the most senior person available. Posty, how can I help you, sir? Me. I've got a problem with the parking company. They're threatening my mother and hiding behind a PO box number, which I believe to be an offense. I know the company is registered at X address, and as you may know, that kind of address is a large building site. Posty, can I call you back, sir? About an hour later. Posty, hello, sir. I've inquired, and you are correct. Even if we needed proof of the threats, they've broken several post office rules and we're only still getting their post as they have only moved 50 yards from where they were and have the same postman who didn't know they were supposed to notify a change of address to the chiefs and not just tell the local delivery guy. Me. So what happens now? Posty. I'll block all their mail at the sorting office and will only release it when I'm satisfied you have been contacted. Me. But how do I contact them? Posty. Bring a letter to the sorting office before 8 tonight. Ask for Posty, and I'll make sure it is delivered tomorrow. I smiled at that. So I wrote a letter that went something like this. Dear Jerks, I act with full authority of my mum. On dated place, your company representative placed a penalty notice on her car for parking in a marked disabled bay. She admits this, but maintains she was displaying her blue badge. I attached a copy of the badge. In an effort to contact you, I contacted Companies House and thereby discovered that you were not at the registered address you were supposed to be at. This is an offense, and I have reported this to Companies House with a view to having the company and its directors struck off. I subsequently contacted the post office, and they also take a dim view of moving without telling them. As such, they have suspended your mail until you contact me with your address. I actually care not what your address is, but I will tell the post office I am happy as soon as I hear from my mother that she is happy. And with that, I ended the letter. I took this round to Posty, who was wearing the grin of someone not entirely unhappy to be involved in inconveniencing a parking company. He said they get around 500 letters a day usually, but tomorrow, just this one as he took my letter from me. I went home, poured myself a whiskey, then called my mom and said that I was sure it would all be okay, and that she must call me if she heard from Jerk's company. That call came just after 1 p.m. the following day. Mum said a lovely man had turned up on her doorstep with a letter saying the matter was dropped, apologizing for any inconvenience, and carrying a massive bouquet of flowers. She said he was especially keen for her to call me. The post office then called 20 minutes later, and though tempted otherwise, I said I was happy, and as far as I was concerned, they could have their mail again. Story 4. Another story reminded me of this, and I can't believe I haven't posted it. This happened about 2-3 years ago. So it was a typical Sunday at work, not too busy. I worked in a postal outlet, so Sundays were usually slow as most didn't know we were open. A gentleman came in before noon and told me that he sent a money transfer the day before, but it was no longer needed, so he wanted the money refunded. I said absolutely, I can do that for you, and asked for his reference number. When you send a money transfer, you receive a reference number, and that is how the money is picked up on the other end or refunded in cases like these. I don't have it. It's at home. I'm sorry, sir. I can't look up your transaction any other way. I need your reference number. He fought with me for a bit, stating that he didn't have enough gas to get home and needed the money. I told him I couldn't do anything for him until he brought in the reference number associated with the transaction. He finally left, and I thought it would be over. Oh no, it wasn't over yet. He came strolling back in a few hours later, this time with his reference number. I went through the transaction, and it wouldn't go through. Checking his ID, I saw it was expired. I knew this was the reason. I also knew he wouldn't believe me. I told him I would call the helpline to figure out the problem. They told me what I suspected, and I relayed the message to him. He was not pleased. Again, a fight. He couldn't afford to go renew his license and had no other form of ID. I held in my "not my problem" comment and told him he needed to bring back a valid piece of ID, and only then could I give him his money. He left again in a huff. It's 4 p.m. We close at 5. The end is near. Who comes walking back in? You guessed it. This guy and his girlfriend. It's on now. I just talked to the helpline. I'm picking it up using her ID. No, you're not. The transaction is in your name. I am not using her ID. The system probably wouldn't let me anyway, and I know they would never let this happen. I actually called when they left just to make sure, and the customer service agent said that they would never allow it. I was on the phone for 2 hours. I'm using her ID. I called the helpline. As I was on the phone, his girlfriend asked me why he could send money without his ID, but he had to have it to receive it. Receiving money is a whole lot different than sending it. They don't care who is sending it as much as who is picking it up. I smiled. I had tried explaining this to him a few times by now. I started to explain, and he cut me off. Don't freaking smile at me. Give me my freaking money. I put the phone down and told him kindly to leave the store. You do not talk to me that way and expect my help. He refused, and another staff member came by to ask what the issue was. He was yelling that I was withholding his money, and then told me he was going to call the cops and then asked for my phone. I said nope. There is a phone at the front you can use. By the time he walked away, it was 5 p.m. I shut my system down and headed to the back to finish. As I was finishing up, a police officer walked into the back room. He's well known to us, the officer said. I explained the situation, and he went and escorted them out. You're well known to the police, and you think they are going to help you in a situation like this? Ridiculous.